Hey everyone, and welcome to the AI Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have serial startup CTO Ben Ritchie on the podcast. Ben, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. And well, let's slide straight into our first regular question, which is what is your technology origin story?
Origin story. Sounds like a video game.
Uh,
Funny enough, hacking video games is probably where it all started. Putting my friends' names into Street Fighter as a
hmm
kid kind of got me into the computer, making hardcore and jungle songs in trackers on the Amiga, and then eventually getting into Oxford doing maths and computation there led me to do tech and investment banks on trading floors for about 10 years, building out like pricing, algorithmic trading technologies, trying to get machines to do trades across millions of dollars in milliseconds. Um, just to give an example of how stressful that could be, my
uh,
boss lost $50 million in a few seconds on the market at one point
wow.
by running someone else's prop trading technology who'd since moved on with the wrong config file.
Oh, no.
So yeah, we managed to sort of crawl back to about 5 million loss in the end, but he got promoted the next year. That was the environment we were in.
Right.
And After 10 years of that, I sort of had more than enough.
Uh,
And sort of took those experiences, saw people like Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey building Twitter, and it felt like if you're a good coder, you could just go
mm,
out there and claim your prize and just build a startup. Obviously, it turns out it's a little bit harder than that. You got to know
mm.
about marketing, sales, fundraising, etc. Fundraising wasn't even a thing really in London at that time.
Mm.
So it's a sort of nascent startup scene. But yeah, 15 years of startups since then, some
Mm.
successes, many failures, and it brings me here today.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Well, we were just talking about the that trading thing before the in the pre-show. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I've just sort of moved into that area, although I'm more in the treasury function rather than directly with that. But it's yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, it was exciting to think about how AI is changing that, or what could go wrong, really. I mean, it's but maybe we'll use that to segue into the next question, which is about how is AI affecting both your life and work, and I think AI for those people in the tech space, obviously AI is very big, but I'm also really interested to hear about any extent to which AI is impacting just your day to day, like outside of work.
Yeah, so I've always had a love for statistics and maths. Obviously, we do math modeling in the banks. Um, and, you know, I think really for me, it was about 10 years ago, 2014 actually,
Mm.
that I took 6 months off work and started to learn about deep learning.
hmm
I could start to see this amazing kind of technology that could start to see, it could start to see, it could start to hear, it could start to guess accurately, and then
Mm.
we saw, it was around that time, there was like Deep Dream, and you could start seeing kind of generatively creating imagery. And
hmm
I just knew I had to sort of understand this. And, we'd had sort of more linear models, less deep learning models that we built into technologies. But this really felt like a game changer. So I started to study all the lectures of like Jeff Hinton,
hmm
Andrew Ng, etc. Did some courses, and I kind of wanted to reposition myself as a data scientist at that time.
Right.
But yeah, like it just felt like that was PhD only, right? It's sort of
Mm. Mm.
off limits. So really, it just became, well, how do I productize this stuff? How can
Mm.
I make products with this stuff and really take the models that other people are building?
Mm.
So, that led to me building some recruitment technology, sort of matching technology, sort of CV parsing, skill extraction, job description, parsing, job, extraction, etc. One of my first startups, Trendy Coders, was sort of designed to sort of mine GitHub,
Mm.
Stack Overflow, find people's
hmm
talents, cross-reference that against CVs and sort of help recruiters and
Mm.
candidates find each other. Um, so that's really when it kicked off properly in terms of getting, I guess we call that legacy AI at this point. I'm not sure.
Right. No, well, or we might refer to it as ML, I guess.
Yeah, I'd like to give it its own name really and
Yeah.
call that ML, yeah, and then sort of probably stick to Gen AI for LLM oriented work.
Right.
Yeah, so how's it affecting my life and my work? I mean, that's when it started to affect my work. But really the last 2 years have been nuts, right?
Mm.
It's I was lucky enough that I was building a startup called Slate IQ, which was
hmm
sort of an attempt to help the movie industry with AI, both to
Oh yeah.
predict and model like the potential success of different types of ideas in the movie
Okay.
industry,
Mm,
and also to help with the research process. So you've got these junior researchers and they go out and they look for different film ideas. They look on Reddit, they look at, interesting books that were written, and
right.
then they sort of do storyboards. So they try and like scope out a an idea. They try and see if someone else has done that idea before or is
Right. Right.
currently, might be something being greenlit by a studio, etc. So that's the research process, and
Mm,
and we started to throw generative AI at that process and built some tools for the research teams to
okay.
have that capability, and that scaled their capability, which is
Mm,
really important actually because it used to be films with like multi-million-dollar investments with multi-million-dollar payouts, but the whole industry is in turmoil really, and you
yeah.
see a lot more YouTube type efforts going really
Mm,
far. So it's more about volume than
right.
quality. Or I can't say quality, but it's more about like you have to have a lot of irons in the fire. And
Mm,
so being able to scale up the research function and actually represent more stories is actually kind of commercially where the whole thing's going.
right.
So yeah, interesting capability to unlock there. In terms of my life, I mean, I'm not like totally hacking my own day to day as much
No.
as I'd like to.
Uh-huh.
But I realize more and more that most of us are locked in this kind of pattern of just doing quite low intelligence things,
Mm,
checking up on my email, updating that person about X, about Y, writing a report for my boss about what I did last week, and
hmm
I'm
hmm
certainly starting to kind of lay the tracks to capture that context and then take away those boring jobs from myself and
Yeah.
start to unlock higher intelligence work.
Mm, mm.
And
Yeah.
then just
Yeah.
to round it all out, I guess, currently building a startup called Growth Nation, which is an agentic AI startup for marketing.
Uh-huh.
And marketers similarly have lots of relatively low intelligence chores they have to do,
Right.
which blocks them from doing the higher value things they want to do.
Uh-huh.
And we're starting to capture those workflows using agentic AI.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah,
Well, oh yeah, so much to dive into there. That was, I mean, just to go back to the Slate IQ. So, and I mean, in my naive understanding of what you were saying there, I guess that's sort of the kind of equivalent of giving something like, ChatGPT deep research to the individual researchers so that they can more easily discover these are the films that might be similar, how they did, just pull together these sort of comprehensive reports, or to situate, well, there's this film we might be developing. What else is out there that can help us understand how this would do? Is that about right?
Yeah, there was two arms to it. There was the kind of legacy reporting and predictive layer, which was more kind of um, what types of signals can we develop to understand the demographics, the
Yeah.
distribution, and the kind of performance um,
Right.
history of these different genres, subgenres, and sort of title themes.
Yeah.
So we would pull in, proprietary data sets around that. So we pulled
Right.
in like piracy data sets, for example, which we did a sort of study to prove is actually a really accurate proxy for consumption.
Mm,
Because like ratings data isn't available for Netflix and other types of video on demand platforms. So you have to come up with proxies for that. So we use
right.
those as proxy measurements.
Interesting.
And then, yeah, we had models around that to understand consumption. Then we understood demographics, like who is actually watching this and what platforms might we distribute to, which is relevant when you pitch it for commissioners. So commissioners have
Right.
different interests, different demographics based on who they commission for. So your BBCs, it'd be different to your Netflix and everything
Right.
like that. So you want to match your kind of projects to the right commissioners and focus your
Right.
efforts. And then sometimes they'll actually list their preferences in something called the Commissioners Index, which is another data set that we ingested. So there's all that kind of matching, prediction,
Mm,
measurement, and then you've got actual research, and that's slightly different, which is like, well, who are the key protagonists in this story? Do any of
right.
them have any legal issues, or are they involved in financial issues? We want to do a background check on people. We don't want to do stories about people who are bad people. We want to make sure that we're actually doing our due diligence to make sure that we're investing in projects that are
Okay.
safe
Right.
to invest in as well. You
Well,
know.
that was interesting what you're saying there. I mean, my brain was bifurcating on, like, you mentioned protagonist. I was imagining the fictional character in the story, and
Oh, sorry, I didn't clarify.
no,
This
no,
is
no, no,
documentary space. Yeah.
Right, but so these are like, someone's coming with it. Like, we've got this film. Here, there are these three people who are involved in the production of the film. We've got to do background checks on them and then research on there. Yeah, and then the like you're saying, the legacy report with all this. I mean, it's interesting. It gives me a picture in my mind of like, right, in order to get, yeah, it's a very sort of hard-edged business. Rather than some creator. But I guess the creator might well be there as a struggling artist saying, "This is what I've got to express, man," and getting that out. But when it comes to then them being funded for that, there's this question of, okay, like how is this going to play in the marketplace? Is this actually going to earn any money or what have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's the eternal struggle between the commercial and the creative in
right.
film, and there's nothing new. But obviously, I've come in there and had to navigate that space.
Mm,
And it's actually one of the things that meant that we didn't really find product market fit for that
mm,
because,
mm,
we were trying to sell this into independent filmmakers who do very much sometimes have a creative vision or access to a certain talent and they just want to tell their story. They're
right.
not particularly interested in the distribution and economics kind
Mm,
of capability.
mm,
Um, and then there's the overall macroeconomics of film, where actually film is struggling,
yeah, yeah.
significantly struggling. So, there's a lot of layoffs, there's a lot of lack of investment in new technology there. Um, we sort of found a bit of a distribution for the software into, key distributors, larger, um, the commissioners themselves on the buy
Right.
side of it, that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
more commercially minded, of course. But yeah, on the independent filmmaker side, like it was a hard sell, to be honest,
Yeah, I
to
can
the
imagine. I
creatives.
can imagine. But interesting challenge though. And then to segue back to, I've got this like stack that I'm popping off. That you talk about the low intelligence things. Of your sort of daily life. I mean, I think it's a really interesting area there. I mean, what I'm finding recently is that as the capability of the AI that I'm using to help me with coding is on, that there is a kind of like I've found, right, that in principle, I can take like a stakeholder request that's not necessarily that complex of a
Mhm.
request, or maybe it's a little bit more request, and I can basically just say to the AI in the context of this code base, could you just do that for me? And it will get on. And of course, it's not instant; it's sort of taking 2 or 3 minutes. And but what I find myself is it's a little worrying actually that I'm kind of slightly leaning back and saying, well, the AI is busy interpreting the stakeholder request, and I can then go and check Slack or email for these other things that I don't know. I mean, I kind of like to keep on top of what are all the sort of communications that are coming in, but yeah, I think it's interesting what you were saying about like, trying to like manage the low intelligence things so that you can focus on the high intelligence things, which makes sense. But I think there's a danger with some of the latest AI tools. The flip side happens like as a human, you're kind of it's lower. What's the word? It's like there's a lower barrier to you like on a given day, maybe you've had a bit of a cold or whatever, and you're not feeling like on the ball. Like rather than necessarily curating your time down to spend all of your time on that high intelligence stuff, which might go for quite exhausting day, it
Mm.
is perhaps tempting to kind of like lean back and just do some of the simpler things. And you understand the risk I'm alluding to here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a few points that are triggering me there. Like, I think um, there's that sort of frontier, isn't it? There's a frontier of like, well, of course we trust autocomplete. If we take it all the way down to like basic prediction of like
Mm,
autocomplete, like that's fine. I'm in the loop. For a given sentence or a given piece of code,
mm,
for a line of code, for a for loop, perhaps you're going to accept an autocomplete on that. Again, you're in the loop. And it's that letting go and finding that boundaries is such a feeling out thing that we're doing as an
mm,
industry of like where our boundary of comfort is, and it depends on
mm.
the task, right? So, you and I were part of a team doing the playgroup with Ian Oswald recently, and
Yeah.
there was an interesting slide shared of the difference between acceptance rates, comfort rates, and sort of performance perceptions around using AI and coding between brownfield projects and greenfield projects,
Right.
and there's a clear drop off in productivity and trust at the level of brownfield versus greenfield.
Mm,
And it's obviously it's all context, right? Like in a brownfield project, there's just not there's a lot of context and there's a lot of history and there's a lot of
mm,
decision making that perhaps isn't captured, or even if it is captured, would completely overwhelm the context window of
mm,
AI for it
mm,
to even bootstrap itself into. the
Yeah.
mental model of that code base versus a greenfield project. It's like, well, let's just get some buttons up on the screen and then we can
Mm.
learn from someone by
Yeah.
demonstrating. So that's part of that feeling out process. That's part of that sort of finding your trust level.
Yeah.
Where's the waterline, in terms of the level of abstraction you want to work at?
Yeah.
And it's a personal thing. It's a project oriented thing. There's no single answer.
Mm.
Um, but for me, the bottlenecks keep shifting. The
Hmm.
bottleneck was writing the code. Perhaps the bottleneck was moving up to the planning level now, and
Mm.
bottlenecks at the code review level, and now it's moving up to the kind of plan review level, I would say, in terms of the
Mm.
way that I'm
Mm.
interacting with my colleagues, the way that I'm interacting with AI itself as we
Yeah.
implement. So I don't know if that directly addresses like your concerns, but it kind of that's the mental model I'm developing about how my relationship with AI is developing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, and it's we've sort of been talking about the terminology, like the ML or the DS, and this well, and of course AI is. I mean, I was having lunch with some bit non-tech people yesterday, and they were like, "Oh, was there AI before?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, it goes back to the chatbot Eliza 1950." I mean, it's like for those of us who have been in the field, it's that term's always been around, and of course the way AI is being used is it refers to Gen AI, which is a different kettle of fish. What we've got recently. But I'm wondering, like, so just as an example from the past, like, we've had people for their sort of the way that their life is being affected. Like, I think one, gosh, I always have I'm terrible now with names, and I always make sure that I have a list of all of the names. I got it's Al, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Al we had on the podcast, Al Cattell, and he introduced me to the advanced voice mode that we have on ChatGPT. That actually then allowed me to interview some of the AIs on the podcast, and yeah, so like, I mean, I now actually GPT-5 is kind of the way it handles my the added context is kind of irritating. But so, for example, the other day, I was walking to work, and I wanted to understand the sort of the bond repo market better, and so I was having a conversation with the AI about the bond repo market on the way to work. So then that's sort of it's still sort of work related, but it's a lot of my time, how I'm managing my time there, and how I'm interacting with data and sort of information is changing. I mean, I wonder for you whether it's I mean, like trying to get a better deal on your mortgage, or like manage something for the family. Are the kind of like consumer AIs sort of like bleeding into how you're operating from day to day, or and if not so much, yeah, perhaps tell me more about how on a given day where the new Gen AI as opposed to the ML and DS, which is always there in the background. How is that affecting how you operate?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say AI has been there for a long time. We always, you know, talks about it. I always love that. It's a bit of an old cliche, probably joke, but like AI is for PowerPoint, but ML's for coders, right? Like we
Right, right.
within the scene, it's ML, but for the business people, it's AI. Um, in terms of that consumer overlap to B2B, it's interesting, isn't it? Like I sort of thought at one point perhaps um, Claude Anthropic were kind of winning the B2B battle. It feels like that to me. The Claude Code is such a powerhouse for
Mm.
human in the loop interaction. I actually think it's the number one platform for human agentic AI interface. Right
Oh,
now,
really?
I don't think there's anything better personally, but like in terms of B2C, it seems pretty clear to me that ChatGPT is, winning that battle. And it
Right.
almost feels like there is that separation of Anthropic
Mm.
on the B2B side more and ChatGPT more on the other. Now everyone's going to have their own favorite, I suppose.
Sure,
So,
sure, sure.
um, I too, like, it's my first port of call for any kind of, thought work.
Hmm.
And it's similar thing with doctors. It's like they're inundated with people coming in with
Yeah, yeah.
self-diagnoses, right? They're using
Hmm.
ChatGPT. But there are cases, right, of people who, diagnose their dog who's nearly dead and fixed it, and
Right,
or diagnose themselves and sort of self-healed where other people couldn't figure it out,
right.
and it's like, yeah, like I'm totally going to it as my therapist, as my,
Oh, really?
first point of call on, yeah, absolutely on, I mean, I went for a separation and, I was able to sort of work out all of the different scenarios through that and legal ramifications and yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's sort of endless how valuable it is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, then I mean that's it's fascinating, and yeah, and so well, I think particularly the division, Anthropic and ChatGPT. I mean, Chat GPT 5 came out, and I thought, and this is just my slight sense, that it was edging Claude 4 on the coding side. Although people rage about that, but now Claude 4.5 is out, and I've switched back to that, and I'm pretty solid on that. Um, but you were sort of saying like you think Anthropic has captured the B2B, and when you were saying that, like there's also now we've got as well as the underlying model, we've got the way it's in which it's being used,
Yeah,
whether
right.
through Claude Code or through the
Yeah.
Claude desktop or
I
this or
actually
the
meant
other.
more the product experience, yeah, than the modeling. Yeah.
And so you mean like yeah, you mean the underlying, like now the latest and greatest is the 4.5. You're saying that's capturing more of the B2B, and certainly that's what I'm using at the moment.
Yeah, like more the actual product experience though, right? Like it's sort of as a developer or just more broadly, like as someone who manages context and manages like planning with an AI and being able
Hmm.
to hand over like set my trust levels and
Hmm.
manage like the amount of context and rule setting at different levels of
Hmm.
hierarchy with
Hmm.
the AI and having
Hmm.
that symbiotic relationship with the AI to be productive. Like that's more what I'm talking about. Like,
Interesting.
Anthropic just seem to be ahead of everything. Like they've just released a new feature that lets you handle well obviously they initially released MCPs, right? Like that was
Yeah,
their yeah, and they've
indeed,
just they've
indeed.
just released skills in the last couple of days.
Right.
And they're just in terms of productivity, I just don't think you can match it. So ChatGPT is still lacking in terms of its natural MCP support and its actual
Mm,
ability to
mm.
be productive within that chat environment.
Okay.
Whereas like Claude Code is a sort of terminal tool, it feels geeky, but I actually think like you shouldn't even call it Claude Code. You should call it Claude Agentic, or Claude Agent or
Mm,
something,
mm.
because there's no better agent orchestration layer as far as I'm concerned than
Okay.
Claude Code. Yeah.
Interesting to hear. Yeah, because so I mean I'm like a very heavy cursor user at the moment. Although there's a bit of windsurf going on, and so yeah, I wasn't really seeing like for me, I'm kind of like. I like being a cursor in that, when there's a new model, whether it's, from whoever it's from, Gemini, Grok, what have you. I mean, I've found Claude stumble on certain sorts of coding problems. I mean,
Right.
it's in the past. I mean, for 4.5 now, not so much, but this is going back to like Claude 4. And it's then been Gemini or ChatGPT that has unlocked and broken through. And so I mean, I get the sense, and I'm not saying this is accurate, this is my sense of, okay, that these are foundation models and new ones keep on coming out. And I really appreciate kind of being in Cursor, being able to switch easily between those. And a lot of those things that like the skill and the MCP and this and the other, and the planning is all sort of handled. The Cursor is just, they got this new planning agent and ask,
Yeah.
trifecta,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been using a lot this week. But maybe I'm missing out on what's happening in Claude code. You find yourself and your people you're working with, they're using Claude code more than Cursor. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, yeah. So we use a combination. We've got Gemini CLI, Cursor background agents, Codex. Kind of don't limit ourselves.
No, no, no.
Um, but I totally agree with you as well that like I actually think that Anthropic have an existential threat, which is that they haven't really solved the hardware problem.
Okay.
ChatGPT, OpenAI are deeply embedded with Microsoft. They made that initial 15 billion investment.
Sure, sure.
So they've got access to the Azure data centers.
Mm-hmm,
They've
mm-hmm,
maximized their usage of that, and now they've sought out other data centers. They're like
mm-hmm.
they've expressed the need to build like nuclear power stations. Like the
Uh-huh.
level of energy use and data center use
Right,
they have
right,
is
right.
insane. Anthropic doesn't have that capability. So, you know, as a user of Anthropic's models, I really want to make a separation here between models and product.
Sure.
So I'm advocating for Claude Code the product, not
Right.
Anthropic's models.
Sure, sure, sure.
I think Anthropic's models are great, but they have a hardware problem. And, we've seen
Mm.
Opus is going down all the time. Like I get their service status updates and, I experience it
Yeah.
firsthand. the models are constantly going down. There's API
Mm,
errors, and
mm,
that's because they're running out of GPUs. They're running out of
mm,
hardware to actually
mm,
execute on, and
right.
they can't meet the demand because they're seeing explosive growth in demand.
Yeah, yeah.
So great product, underlying models, underlying capability to scale those models, massively a threat
Mm.
for Anthropic and Claude. So and you're right, like I think being model agnostic in Cursor is a great thing. But if you look at Cursor's product development, they're playing catch up really. You know, they brought the planning mode out recently. They've started to bring out hooks.
Mm.
Again, MCP's just come to sort of ChatGPT in the last couple of months.
Hmm.
All of that was innovated in Anthropic. You know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, many months ahead.
Indeed, indeed, and I think also, I mean, like for example, Cursor now getting its Ask mode that was available in other editors earlier, and then yes, yes, okay, so that's right, but yeah, but so yeah, I mean that was, I mean, yeah, there's an interesting thing, isn't it, with the different lock-ins. I mean, I'm also
Yeah.
using codecs and so on, but then on the business side, and I'd love to get more into the agents thing just before we perhaps move on to that. Although so much exciting stuff running out of time. The I was just really interested in what you were saying there about the legal and the medical and like the therapy and so on. Is when people there was a big news article or when ChatGPT 5 came out and OpenAI removed access to like the four model, and there was sort of a bit of an outcry from people who are like, the personality has changed. A lot of people were like in the B2C were using this as a sort of a partner to discuss issues with, and then that was quite a wrench for some people. And I guess maybe if you've been using it for some of those areas yourself, did you feel a sort of a bump there, a shift when the models changed?
Uh, I can't say that I have actually, but a parallel to that has been what I've seen at Anthropic, which was, you know, we had I spent £200 a month for the Max package
Mm, mm,
On Claude, and that gave me unbridled access to Opus 4 4.1,
mm,
which is one of the smartest models.
yeah.
Um, and I think as a reaction to the fact that they can't actually scale the hardware to meet the demand,
Mm,
they've brought out Claude 4.5, which I think is probably a quantized model, you know, which
okay.
runs
Yeah.
leaner. And
Mm,
they've heavily limited the use of Opus now
mm,
in the throttling. So in the fair use. So, you know, why have they done that? I think they've done that because they're trying to get more out of less. And
sure,
so I've had a
sure.
similar sort of dissatisfaction of having the rug pulled in terms of the models from Anthropic.
Right.
In terms of the GPT-5 experience, there's certainly like we know that it's got model routing under it, right? And it
Mm,
chooses the level of sophistication for you based on what it thinks,
mm,
if it thinks it's a complex task or
yeah.
not. I've
Yeah.
certainly experienced it where I've asked difficult questions on the generic GPT-5 and it's kind of not routed to the right model for that level of complexity.
Mm, mm,
You know,
hmm.
but obviously you can still select O3, you can still force model selection, right? I think so.
Yeah, on the I guess not necessarily in the B2C setup,
Yeah, right, not in the
but
PC,
you
yeah.
can on the, if you've got
But
access to
as
the
power users, like everyone
yeah.
on this
Well,
podcast would be
yeah,
able to
absolutely.
sort of
Yes.
thrive it.
Yes, indeed. There's two different worlds there, aren't there? I mean, I definitely want to get into the agents thing. I'm just thinking in the interest of time, let's hit some of the other. I'm really interested to hear, you find yourself, in a leadership role. I'm just really interested in maybe a quick segue. We'll come back to tech in a moment on your perspective on leadership, like how to, lead teams. You're busy getting, new companies off the ground and so on, which, as you mentioned before, is like, it's not just the tech, there's the marketing, all this, that, and the other. But,
Yeah.
we are the AI leadership podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on leading humans before the AIs take over eventually?
Yeah. I mean, it's created a lot of stress actually in the team. You know, a lot of tension between we talked earlier about that kind of rising water level, the level of abstraction you're comfortable
Mm,
working at with
hmm
AI, your level of
hmm
trust. That it's a feeling. I mean, there's no one that can tell me the metric that tells me what level's safe to work at, right?
mm,
It's so
mm,
context dependent.
hmm
And you know, it's a tension that always existed, right? Which is sort of, especially in startups, where it's like, hey guys, how far should we go? How much
Right.
technical debt is acceptable? And you know, these things are technical debt machines,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So as CTO, I absolutely want to have some level of control over
right.
the level of acceptable technical debt and velocity.
Sure.
But getting everyone aligned with that and
Yeah.
getting them aligned with how much to let go, especially when it's their craft, you know,
Yeah.
is definitely challenging. And then I've talked about the bottlenecks, you know, like I used to either ask someone else or myself review every line of code,
Hmm.
right? Realistically, like that's, I mean, you skim over some bits, but you're pretty much reviewing every line of code.
Uh-huh.
But that just became an unacceptable bottleneck to velocity at some point, right? And we
Mm.
just could not do that. And so now it's
Mm.
more about reviewing the plan for the code and reviewing the test
Mm.
strategy around the code.
Hmm.
But we're literally ignoring like hundreds, if not thousands, of lines of code now.
Wow. Yeah.
It's certainly, at the rendering level, the React level, whatever, right? Like the buttons work. I've got a Cypress test plan that proves they work and they will always
Yeah.
work. And I just don't care really about how that was built. And actually, we've
Mm.
got a product designer that we've empowered with a tool called Builder.io who prompts his way to create screens for himself and
Right.
creates animations and interaction design and all things that he would
Mm.
have done in Figma that then
Hmm.
someone else would have to sort of transcode into like code. And we don't do that. We take PRs from him, we review the PRs, we strap testing onto it, and we
Right.
release.
Yes.
We didn't write a single line of React at any point. It's
Mm.
insane. But at that leadership level, taking people on that journey and like
Yeah.
giving them the space to sort of fail and set like create a culture of, I mean, it's cliche, right? But move fast and break things and telling them, look, I don't mind if you break things.
Right.
Yeah, like we'll build a test for that and we'll make sure it doesn't break in future.
Right.
But I'm giving you agency to
Mm.
fuck up, to make mistakes. And, um, that's acceptable for the benefits we get, that increase in velocity and
Right.
increase in learning. Like the key metric I'm driving is learning rate as an early stage startup. We're
Okay.
here to learn,
Right.
we're
Right.
not here to sort of polish a turd. Like we need to
Right.
get
Right.
something out and we need to get to market and learn. So it creates a lot of pressure, it creates a lot of discomfort and,
Sure.
I have to help people emotionally navigate that.
Yeah. Oh, but I'm so glad we're capturing this further. Lots of fascinating insights there. Wow. Yeah, I think that I was focusing on you were mentioning there about you want to maximize for the learnings, and I
Yeah.
guess then I'm interested. And I'm no suggestion that there has to be. Is it possible to then have a metric for those learnings, or is it then just your job as a leader to have a sense of how much learning is going on? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we're leaning on Dora metrics, right? So
Okay.
Dora metrics are kind of uh, how many deployments are occurring, deployment frequency,
Right.
mean time to failure rate, mean time to failure resolution,
Right.
and lead time on new
Mm-hmm.
ideas.
Right.
And so if my product designer comes up with something, how long till he can get it into production? If he gets into production, how likely is it to fail? If it fails, how long does it take us to fix it?
Right.
And,
Right.
and then how many things are we pushing out a week? And
Mm.
we're just seeing everything go exponential in the
Okay.
right direction.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're having to develop new things, right? So talked about Claude Code hooks, um, we have lots of process around the planning stage, around the planning review stage. As again, like what was traditional code review, it's moved up a level to plan review, and we have a process around that. And these
Right.
plans are incredibly detailed. Like we have in the AI spit out mermaid diagrams, they
Yeah.
have
Right.
sequence diagrams that help
Yeah.
us understand the
Yeah.
flows that are about to occur before they're written. And then the test plans is incredibly detailed.
Mm.
And we don't veto things. We don't sign something off until it's very clear what's going to happen, and then we trust the code at that point to be good.
Got
So
you. Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm hearing that, and I'm sort of perceiving, yeah, I say that model there where it's like, okay, we're going, and this is we're asking, whichever, with Claude or whatever, for like let's have the plan, right? I'm going to review the plan. Okay, change these into things. Now, like we pair wider group, we signed off on the plan, right? Testing strategy. Okay, it tested there. Like these will guarantee that pressing this button leads to this thing. And like you say, you've sort of effectively we don't really care exactly what form the code is in, as long as we have a plan and a testing strategy that we're happy with, and that the buttons do the job that they do.
yeah, and I think some people will listen to this will be like, "What the hell?" Like I'm using these same tools he's talking about, and there's no way that I would let go of the code. And I get it. Like it's not like we did it automatically. We got to this level of trust
Right, right.
because we spent a lot of time developing process around a hierarchy of Claude MD files that represent our rules, and then
Mm,
we've got
mm,
a very detailed set of code review prompt instructions that we've engineered over time, and
Yeah.
we've got a lot of automated test suites that run as hooks. So every time there's a generation of a small snippet of code, a number of checks are run
Right, right,
automatically
right.
within session, and that code is not allowed out of its kind of guardrails until it's passed all of these quality checks. So it's all these things that have led to us increasing the trust and letting go. It's been
Yeah.
like it's been a 3 to 6 month journey, So yeah, don't think that you can just take what's
No,
currently delivered off the shelf and that you can jump to this level of trust.
no, no, no. It's fascinating. Yeah. And then, I mean, you mentioned the Dora metrics. I mean, I guess that like the potential fear, which may be an irrelevant one, but is that, for example, that one could experience like that it almost seemed like the metric could be gamed in that if there were problems being introduced that were sort of like silly, unnecessary problems at a frequency and then fixing them, do you know what I'm saying? It kind of like, but I guess it's your confidence in all of the other parts of the process and the signing off of the planning, whatever, that that those metrics are reflecting real valuable learning. Like I think, you'd have to have electrodes in the people's brains in some ways to be actually checking what are they really learning about the domain and the stakeholders and this, that, and the other. But I guess that's you've got this, it's your confidence in that process combined with the metrics, and then presumably, an intuitive sense as you are talking and discussing, like the evolving landscape and what's going on, that you feel that there's real learning going on there, and not just superficial learning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so the the rate of deployment, lead time for new ideas being deployed. Let's not call them ideas, let's call them experiments.
Yeah.
Anything meaningful in a PR is going to be some sort of experiment. And we have tagging on the things that are tech debt, DevOps, or bug,
Mm,
and
mm,
so we know
mm.
the things that are genuine experiments. My personal belief is that software evolves. It
Yeah.
co-evolves in an environment. An environment is usually users, right?
Yeah.
It may be other systems. And the rate of evolution that we're seeing, as I
Mm,
say, all those Dora metrics go exponential. That means our experimentation rate is going exponential.
mm,
And so
mm.
for me, learning rate is just downstream of that. If you
Right.
can conduct more and more experiments and you see that change rate going up, like I'm almost certainly increasing the rate of evolution.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant, interesting, fascinating. I mean, exciting stuff. I'm gonna bring us on to the next question, which is, what is your most exciting tech hack? And I'm hoping that it's going to be a tech hack involving agents. I mean, you've already there. I think that, as you described, all those hooks and so on. Fantastic. And I mean, I still see what you're describing there so far as that's kind of like coding assistance I mean, on steroids, right? But then doing this amazing, amazing thing. When I hear the word, like, when I get excited about agents, it's not about there's a coding agent that can use a few tools and this and other. It's about something more than that. And I'm hoping that using Growth Nation, it's more than that. You're using this framework to do these experimentations, but there's perhaps something bigger here. But yeah, what is the most? And I'm thinking, rather than like something that you will do, something you're doing at the moment, and maybe you won't want to reveal it because it's just secret sauce for your startup. But what's the most exciting tech hack that you're really thrilled about at the moment? Hopefully involving agents, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to tell you that we publish an MCP and that we're fully agentic, and that people could come in and just sort of co-evolve new workflows we've never heard of or thought of, just by talking to an agent and sort of giving it your goal.
Right.
But we're not quite there. Like that is definitely in pipeline for us, and I think we're laying the tracks for that. Part of what we've done is build like an eval tool into our system so
Hmm.
that we can like eval like the outputs of the system with a human in the loop, which starts to create the feedback loops that let us let users start to execute their own kind of
Hmm.
workflows and
Hmm.
then rate the outputs. So that
Hmm.
creates like I think the learning environment for us to breed agents, as it were. And
Yeah.
then the agents themselves, each tool that we're building, we hope to empower this flexible agent that can then execute on any one of our APIs. So we're sort of developing that MCP capability. And then,
Hmm.
there will be people who are already spending most of their time in ChatGPT, let's say marketers, right? We've already interviewed marketers who spend time, one of them's got a ChatGPT session they call Colin, which is like their assistant for marketing. And
Yeah.
it knows all about their customers. And there's a different Colin for every customer. It has
Yeah.
its short, has a memory, it's a project. And, you know, that context is valuable. She's
Yeah.
developed that context over time,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and she doesn't want to redevelop it in our tool. She
No.
doesn't
No.
want a
No.
new ChatGPT. No one wants a new ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT
No.
is pretty good, and a lot
Right.
of these businesses and these processes are getting quite entrenched already. So if we
Mm.
can emerge as an MCP in her Colin and give
Got you.
Colin the
Yes.
capability to execute all these marketing functions, to have a deep understanding of SEO, a deep understanding of the existing blog on their website, deep understanding of the brand voice, of the colors, of the palette, of the imagery, so that they can author new content in context of that
Right.
customer,
Right.
then she becomes an amazing fractional CMO, which is what she does, right? So yeah, like we that's the agentic capability that we're building and that we want to embed in everyone's workflows.
Fascinating. And I think, I'll just reflect this back to you to make sure I'm understanding. And I mean, I want to label it as, almost the exciting tech hack there is MCP. And it's about, then like creating effectively an offering that's
Yeah.
available over MCP that people will then be able to seamlessly merge into their workflows. And I guess they may not necessarily even know that it's like, I guess, your MCP server could be published and be available, but I guess there's some aspect, like if this person's they're working in ChatGPT, presumably you'll get some credit. Like ChatGPT will say, "Oh yeah, I've been thinking about that problem. Oh yes, I went to Growth Nation's MCP and found all these things." And so, presumably you'll get credit for adding the MCP element to the ecosystem. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually the other way around. So it's like exactly the same as how that trust level grows up the level of abstraction,
Yeah.
and you become more and more hands off. As I
Yes.
described the coding process and
Yes.
journey that
Yeah.
we've been on. Similarly, I want to take marketers on that journey. So the way that's going to manifest is they're going to come to our website, they're going to do
Right.
the regular onboarding, they're going
Uh-huh.
to see their brand reflected in the palette and the imagery
Okay.
and the tone of voice. They're going to understand that we understand who their customers are. They're
Right.
going to see that we've indexed their blog and we've indexed all their
Yeah.
content and we understand like how they're talking to their customers.
Yeah.
And then we're going to start understanding the problems and we're going to start mapping out like a content calendar, let's say, whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
And then as they start publishing to their CMS and start talking to their customers through their marketing materials, their trust level will grow and the
Hmm.
agency that they give us will grow. And then, that's when they start to let go. That's when they start to integrate the MCP into their workflow. That's when we manifest ourselves on Slack.
Okay.
That's when we give them the weekly meeting update where we're like, this is what we did this week,
Yeah.
but that's the end rather than the beginning, is that we
Okay.
become so hands off that we're
Right.
kind of,
Got you.
yeah, we're just like almost invisible.
Yeah, yeah, amazing, amazing. Well, gosh, not enough time, but I wonder if we can, wrap the last couple of questions, the last couple of minutes here. But you're involved in, the future of AI here, in how it's going to be used for marketing and so on. But what do you see broader? I mean, no one's got a crystal ball, but I'm interested in people's opinions. Like, 2 years, 5 years, is AGI going to suddenly, emerge and totally change the game? How do you see things going in the next year or two? And what does that mean for all of us? What does our life and universe end up meaning in the face of all of these changes?
I think my product designer presented a mental model for me, which I think is great, which is like in the old days, we had services and it was quite expensive and quite slow. You'd go somewhere to a travel agent and you'd ask
Yeah,
them, I want to go on holiday. And they go, well,
yeah,
come back to you in a week with a few prices, whatever. And then they come back and you say, okay. Um, but it was expensive. Like you had to
yeah,
pay that human to do those things. It was great, but it was expensive. And it was slow. And then you got self-serve. So you got like,
yeah.
the ability to find prices a bit
Velocity,
quickly.
whatever. Yeah,
But you had to do the work. You had to you have to type and you have to
yeah,
search and you have to
yeah,
maybe build a spreadsheet of all different options. And it was great because you got like real cheap stuff and you got it quick, but you had to do the work. And what's happened is like everything became self-serve and
yeah,
less things became
yeah.
concierged, and we got
Right,
less of that service. And so now our lives are purely self-serving stuff. We're
right,
clicking
right.
buttons, we're reading things, we're trying to build a mental model of like numbers and like some
Uh,
price comparison of this and that. And we're ingesting information, but it's not high intelligence work. It's just self-serving and clicking
right,
buttons,
right,
and
right.
no one's happy with that. Like it's not fun. Like no one's enjoying that.
Mm,
And so we're going to go back to the service model. We're going to go back to the concierge model
okay.
where it was someone cared about what we needed, went
Right.
away and did something for us, but it's
Mm,
going to be quicker and it's going to still be as cheap as self-serve.
right.
So that's like the mental model that we have for all business operations. and it's exciting, I think, and it frees humans up to be what we once were, which is sort
Right.
of, we can start doing things other than reading forms and clicking buttons, and
Right. Right.
that's going to look really passe soon, I think,
Mm,
and it's not going to be the future of the web. And in parallel to that is content. So like, I'm in the marketing space. SEO's dying. Up to like 50% of content is now estimated to be written by AI.
mm,
There's going to be a content collapse. Obviously, we've got the slop thing going on right now, but at
mm,
some point, it's not even going to be necessary. If we're not self-serving and evaluating options and trying to click all the forms, what's going to happen? It's going to
mm,
be MCPs talking to MCPs, it's going to be agents talking to agents,
mm.
and it's all disintermediated, and it's really just databases at that point, right? Like you said, so what is like Skyscanner? It's a
Yes.
form, it's a this, it's a database,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
Like, so my agent's going to go to the database and get prices and then help me understand choices and make choices.
Mm,
So, it's going to be a big collapse of the content and the internet, and we've kind of already seen that. And I think what will remain though is human trust. So, like, I still want to know what other humans think about things. I still want to know what the
mm,
reviews are, the ratings.
mm,
In
mm,
fact, I think the value of those things will go up and the value of brand will go down.
mm,
And so, content will still matter. Storytelling will still matter. Human
mm,
stories will still
mm.
matter, but only if they're like verified, guaranteed human stories. And reviews are part of that,
Right. Right.
but like marketing content is less so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I get the sense then that you have an optimistic outlook. It's kind of like, the
Yeah,
if,
absolutely.
if we get AGI, it's gonna create a butler who really does appreciate what it is that we need and is going to sort things out for us, and a new golden age will dawn.
Uh, you know, I mean, if we're going to get into that, there's like we're marshalling mutation, we're marshalling the life and death of tech. We are like potentially the biological bootloader of a new life form, as
Yeah.
Elon Musk says, and it's
Right.
scary. But I do have an optimistic sort of. I don't know if anyone, your listeners, listen to Ian M. Banks and know about the
Mm.
culture, but there's sort of this optimistic vision of AI
Yeah, one of
where
my favorite series, yeah, novels. Yeah, go on.
yeah, where the artificial intelligence just doesn't care. It just starts traveling the universe and
Right,
it
right.
just transcends us completely and is like happy to sort of entertain us and it's glad it
Right.
respects its history of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully it's more that than like we're pets to AI or whatever. But it will transcend us, I think, on some level, and you just hope we can have a symbiotic relationship with it.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. Fantastic, fantastic. Oh, it's been such a great conversation. And but I shouldn't have tried to wrap those two questions together. I'm gonna like take apart the other. And then, but then, so for you, what gets you up in the morning? Like, could it be a simulation? We're just playing a game. How do you make sense of this strange whatever it is we experience as life?
Um, I think evolution's been marching on before us, it will march on after us, and this is part of evolution. I think
Mm.
if you ever play like the
Yeah, yeah,
civilization games, it's like there's certain epochs of technology
right,
development, and there's a certain inevitability, I think, in that model
right.
about each epoch, as stone and metal, and yeah, like the car, and yeah, I mean, this is to me, it's happened so quickly, right? From like
Mm.
computers coming around to this.
Yes,
And so there's just a real inevitability about it. It is really just statistics manifesting itself in silicon, and
mm,
so,
mm, mm.
you know, I just don't want to be scared of it. And I think our job as people who play the civilization game is to co-evolve that technology. And I just steer into the skid. I just
Right.
think there's those who try and don't steer into the skid and they crash. And then there's those who steer into the skid. And I might not know where that skid's going, but I'm just going to steer into the skid.
Amen. Great stuff. Well, Ben, it's been amazing. Is there anything we've talked about your Growth Nation? I'm sure people will want to go and check that out. Is there anything else you want to like highlight for people that they to find out more about you or the things that you're doing?
No, but I would definitely welcome people to reach out and, either to invite me to events as you both have, or to, just to reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you've heard anything here you didn't make sense to you, I'd love to hear that. And if
Yeah,
you got something, something you can teach me as well, I'd love to learn. So it's just part of our co-evolution, right?
brilliant. Let's co-evolve. Fantastic. Well, we'll get your LinkedIn link in the show notes, and yeah, people absolutely can make comments on. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on. But yeah, also reach out on LinkedIn. And well, thanks everyone. That wraps up this episode of AI leadership. If you'd like to be on the podcast or join the Rebel AI community that it all started from, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Sam Joseph. That's sam@neurogrid.com or on LinkedIn, and we'll be in your ears again real soon. Finally, big thanks to our guest today, Ben Ritchie.
Thanks, sir.